Welcome to my action research presentation on discrete trial training for middle school students with developmental disabilities. The problem I have chosen to address in this presentation is based on my experience working as a paraprofessional in a suburban school district. For the purposes of this project, I am assuming the role of the special education teacher in the comprehensive needs program. The comprehensive needs program serves 4 students, 2 fifth graders and 2 sixth graders. All 4 of the students have severe disabilities and spend at least 50% of each school day in a separate special education classroom. Many of the students have been working on the same IEP goals for years with very slow progress. The students in this class also need to work on basic skills such as decoding words, basic arithmetic, and self-care. They've not mastered these skills yet, despite various attempts at intervention over the years. My proposed solution for this problem that I would like to research is the use of discrete trial training to teach academic subjects to these students. Discrete trial training is defined as teacher-directed instruction that is empirically grounded in experimental analysis of behavior. Discrete trial training includes a systematic recording of data as well as reinforcement procedures. Discrete trial training is considered an evidence-based practice for early childhood students with autism spectrum disorders and those with developmental disabilities. I am wondering if this intervention will work with my middle school students who have not responded to previous interventions. Now I will discuss some of the research questions that have led me to conduct this study. My main question is, how effective is discrete trial training for teaching my 5th and 6th grade students in the comprehensive needs program? The sub-questions include, do skills learned through discrete trial training in the special education setting generalize to other settings? How difficult is it to implement discrete trial training in my classroom? How do other teachers, parents, and staff members feel about using discrete trial training to teach these students? Do their opinions change after the intervention has taken place? Do my students learn at a faster rate with discrete trial training than they do with my current teaching methods? I hope to address most or all of these questions through my study. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about my research design and methods. I've chosen to use a mixed methods design for my research to give myself a little chance to dip into the qualitative side of research, which I'm less familiar with, while still being able to use my preferred method of quantitative as well. I'm hoping that the mixed methods design is going to give me a unique opportunity to see exactly how the intervention is affecting my students from a few different points of view. And I'm hoping that this will really make my case a lot stronger when I'm making conclusions based on the study. The participants I'm going to use for my research are the 4 students in the comprehensive program. It makes a lot of sense because I'm already working with these students and they're already spending half or most of their day in the comprehensive needs room, which is a separate area, and they're spending a lot of time working one-on-one with adults, and I think that it's totally manageable to implement this research design in my own classroom. So that kind of covers the setting. It's going to be in my own special education classroom. We call it the comprehensive needs room at my school. It's a suburban school outside of Chicago. The data collection measures I'm going to use are quantitative and qualitative. The quantitative data, which I love, actually is built into the intervention itself. Part of the reason that I chose this intervention, and one of the reasons that I think that it can be effective. So the best way to really explain how data is going to be taken during each session is to give you an example. So when I've used this in the past with a 9-year-old student with autism, one of her target skills was recognizing CVC words, or consonant vowel consonant words. So one of the first specific discrete trial steps was recognizing words with the OG sound. So each trial consisted of a different consonant followed by OG, and the student would be asked to read the word. So for example, she would read dog, pog, log, tog. Doesn't matter if they're nonsense words, it's all about decoding. So for each time I presented her with a new word, I would record either a plus or a P in my data record. A plus would mean that she did it independently and correctly by herself, and a P would mean that I prompted her, and then she was able to do it correctly. So if I do 10 trials per day, which only takes a couple of minutes because it's really quick, I can get a percent mastery level very easily. So for example, if she did 6 independently and 4 with prompting, she would present 60% mastery for that day. Over time, this is a really effective, easy way to see how progress is going. The qualitative method I'm going to use are semi-structured interviews, and I'm going to administer it twice. Do 2 different interviews, one before starting intervention and one, in the late spring before I'm about to wrap up the study. I'm going to interview the parents, paraprofessionals, and gen ed teachers working with my students. I'm going to try to elicit information about how each individual feels about the intervention based on how they felt on previous interventions tried with the same students or in their experience. So some example questions for maybe a parent would be, what interventions have been tried with your child in the past? Which were most successful in your opinion? What are the characteristics of the best teachers? And also, I'm going to ask some questions about the student's current level of performance. And then after I have been implementing the intervention for a few months, I'm going to do another round of qualitative interviews, inquiring about any new skills that they have noticed the students using, how they think that the student was able to learn it, and their feelings about how the school year has been going. I am planning to conduct my action research over the course of one school year. In August, I will begin by reviewing academic history and IEPs for each of my students. This will help me to establish reading and math goals and break them down into discrete teachable steps. In September, I will begin conducting the first round of interviews, and I will establish baseline performance levels for each goal for each student. In October, I will begin my discrete trial training intervention for the target skills in reading and math. In November, I will begin to establish science, social studies, and potentially self-care goals and the steps required to teach them. In January, I will begin discrete trial training for target skills in new subjects. In April, I will conduct my second round of interviews, and in May, I will analyze my results, report out, and make plans for the next round of my study. Data analysis. The quantitative data, as I've already described, is built into the intervention itself. Data will be recorded for each trial, which will elicit a percentage mastery level for each skill during each session. The data can then be represented in the form of line graphs to track progress for each skill. The data will also indicate when a skill has been mastered and it is time to move on to the next skill. The qualitative interviews may confirm or disconfirm the effectiveness of my intervention. By asking questions to parents, teachers, and paraprofessionals, I will be able to gauge the effectiveness of my intervention as well as the feelings of others involved. To address issues of validity, I am using a mixed methods design which will allow for triangulation between the different types of measures in my study. I also plan on training all of the paraprofessionals that will be working with these students and regularly switching off who's working with which student. This will help to basically make sure that the results are not person specific and that the skills have generalized to different people. I expect that the discrete trial training intervention will result in improved acquisition and mastery of skills. I am particularly interested in looking at an increase in the rate of learning of my students. The built-in data collection should be easy to record and analyze, and I am hoping that this holds true throughout my study. I'm also expecting to see my students generalizing the skills that they have learned in the special education classroom to other settings at school and at home. The qualitative interviews should help to prove this. Also, the quantitative and qualitative methods should show convergence in the results. Another expected outcome, and perhaps the most important one, are the further questions that will be illuminated through my research. I aim to find out who discrete trial training works for, which age groups will most benefit from it, and how old is too old for discrete trial training to work. I'm hoping to be able to continue with discrete trial training and potentially make some modifications to my methods for the next round of students. Please take a moment to look at the references that provided evidence for the intervention of discrete trial training. Thank you for listening.